Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Crispin, and welcome to LM605 Live Session 2. And we're going to talk about some chapters 3 and 4 as part of our Live Session 2. So let's get started. We've got a presentation here that I think you might find interesting. And by the way, we'll share this recording and this presentation on the website, so you'll be able to have access to it at your convenience. And for those of you watching the recording, thank you for watching the recording. We'll have one of these every week, and I encourage you to come and attend in person. All right. Just about there. There we go. Well, again, this is the live session 2, and it's international business, and we're going to talk about some pretty exciting things coming up here. There's the macroeconomic trade theory, firm level expansion models, and applied FDI market selection. And if you wondered what executives do all day in their big offices, is they think very clearly and very long and hard about the different types of opportunities there are throughout the world. But in order to know how viable those opportunities are and how to mitigate as much risk as possible, they need to understand international trade theory, among other things, because it's a different ballgame outside the confines of our nation. Things are a little bit different. So here's what's called the theoretical to practical cascade. And first of all, the executives need to understand in the firm what international trade is and why countries would trade internationally. What's the benefit for them? And then the next is to understand the micro pathway. And this is how firms expand, which is exactly what the executives are attempting to do. And I say executives, but they need input from wherever you are in their decision-making process if you're part of that decision to go internationally. And finally, third is, well, we've made our decision. Now we commit. We commit our resources, our capital. And so this requires aligning global economic realities with firm level behavior and capabilities and local market conditions. So they have to have some expertise internationally for this equation to be successful. So let's look at how global trade theory has evolved. It basically formally started back in 1776 with Adam Smith, where he talked about the lowest cost wins, and a country should specialize in commodities it can produce at absolute lowest cost per unit. It almost sounds like Walmart, doesn't it? And next came along in refining this a little bit was Ricardo in 1817, and he suggested in building on the absolute advantage, he built an idea called comparative advantage, where relative opportunity cost dictates trade. Countries benefit by exporting what they produce most efficiently relative to other goods. So it encourages a country to stand out in the things it can produce better than other countries. And then move forward a long time to post-World War II, and you've got the Hecksler-Ohlin model, and they discuss factor abundance drives exports, and nations export goods utilizing their most abundant and cheap product and factors, and production factors, for instance, labor and capital. We saw a lot of Japanese cheap toys and so forth during this era. Cheap, everything just very inexpensive, lowest cost. And now we're seeing the Chinese replacing the Japanese in their lowest cost manufacturing and producing of goods. Next came the gravity model by Isard, and it talks about mass and proximity predict flows. So bilateral trade is governed by sheer economic size, the GDP, of 2 units minus the friction of the distance between them. Now, what does that sound like? It sounds like the U.S. and China. We get along, but we also have friction. And the idea is to maximize the trade and minimize the friction so that we both can stay in the game. And this is Ricardo's sort of an example of comparative advantage. There are two countries, A and B, producing two identical items, X and Y. X could be soybeans, Y could be coal. They're commodities. They both come out of the earth, and so the cost should be similar, but they are not due to other factors like labor and land and so forth, different values. So anyway, country A has an absolute advantage in both of these areas in X and Y, 10 versus 15 in terms of labor units in product X, at 20 versus 25 in countries A and B, and commodity Y, coal. So, however, country A's cost for X is only 66% of B's cost, 10 over 15. Its cost for Y is 80% of B's cost, 20 over 25. So this we would resolve that country A possesses the comparative advantage in X, while country B has the least comparative advantage in Y. And so free trade guarantees mathematical win-win, and specialization creates value if one nation is superior in all lines of production. So it's pretty clear that country A is going to win out in the soybeans and coal production over country B. And they should specialize that and get their costs down even further and their productivity even higher. By the way, they can get their productivity higher because the excess profits that they make can be put back into research and development to improve their operation and commodity extract processes. So that's how comparative advantage really wins in the making. All right. Well, here's a great graphic. It's market imperfections in the multinational enterprise, which we're going to be studying a lot of, are multinationals. So in the world of the perfect market myth, it assumes that perfect competition, perfect knowledge, and frictionless resource allocation exists. Well, we know that's not true. There's always friction. There's always a lack of information in some areas, and the competition is not perfect. So we move over to the right, and we see that this is represented by this chasm of structural imperfections, and the key is to get across the chasm without falling in. And there are things that do interfere, such as natural barriers, technology, proprietary technology, unequal access to inputs. You know, China has rare earths technology or rare earths commodities, and they can withhold them at any time, and they have, and that's caused real challenges. No matter how much we're willing to pay for them, they're not selling, and when that happens, that can be very difficult for the nation, particularly when they need this to put in their systems and jet fighters and other high-tech systems. So finally, the multinationals sort of bridge all of this. This is the environment where they have to excel, and they do. Many of them do. And this is where they do not just participate in markets. They are institutions built specifically to bypass natural market imperfection. They bridge that gap. And internalize transaction cost efficiencies. So this is the Uppsala engine of experiential learning, and it's very important because if you don't know what you don't know, and then that's a challenge. But worse, if you don't know which road to take, any road will do. And there are so many roads to choose from in international trading and business that one must be very careful. In this country, we've sort of figured that out because we understand the internal and external environments, the competitive environments. But overseas, due to social customs and governments and differences and so forth, it can be a real hazard if you don't know what you're doing. So we start off with experiential learning in market knowledge. Executives in the firm need to have a market knowledge, and if they don't have it, they need to go get it so that they can understand the foreign markets and operations. You simply cannot compete if you can't do that. Next is uh, commitment decisions. Okay, we've got the what, now when, and I I'm working for a university and in a former capacity with the university. I was their provost, and the president came to me and said, "John, we have a program with a partner in Vietnam, in Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City, and we need you to go there and check it out and see if we should keep it or expand it. What should we do?" And I said, "Mr. President, thank you, but no thank you." In the height of the Vietnam War, uh, many of my friends were selected through the draft to go to Vietnam and serve. My draft number was too high, and therefore I did not serve, and I don't wish to go there now. The food uh, is strange. The country smells funny, and and uh, and the people hate us because of what happened in the Vietnam War. So he said, I'm not feeling like I want to go." And he said, "Well, that's all well and good, John, and you're probably right, but it's your job, so you must go." I said, "Okay, Mr. President, I'll go." So I did go. And this is what I found out through experiential learning, that number one, the people were marvelous. They held nothing, no grudges. They were wonderful to be around, hardworking, very diligent, and uh, very nice personalities. The food was outstanding, always fresh, and was not weird. And there were no noxious smells in the country that caused one to recoil. So, having gone there, I learned a lesson, and I've been going there ever since 2013, and I enjoy it every time. So having an experience is very important. And so you would look for in your executives, what kind of experience do you have in these foreign markets that we want to compete in? So next would be again those ongoing activities, the actual operation intensity abroad, and then finally the market commitment. And so through this learning process, you become confident of the kind of risk that you're trying to minimize and the productivity that you're trying to gain. And this is called the psychological distance staircase. And again, it starts off with very limited knowledge, and this could be a licensing kind of an operation, all the way up to the final steps there, where it would be a manufacturing implant purchase to be direct foreign investment. uh, would be what the last would be, and being an active player, participant, and citizen. And this is where the multinationals come in, as they want to do as much of that as economically and feasibly possible, because they aim to be worldwide citizens. And this is again that Uppsala pathway that we talked about, and it's a very deliberate. It can be slow and incremental, but it's very effective. However, things in the world have changed, and therefore technology has enabled a born global reality, meaning that uh, stage theories explain traditional manufacturing, modern technology ventures frequently skip the developmental stages, entering multiple foreign markets from inception. And this can be done very quickly by the uh, labor saving, technology driven companies and processes. So, um, this is sort of the new reality today. Technology equals speed, and speed and decisions equal gaining a foothold in a marketplace. So let's talk about foreign investment. There are four types. Four types of foreign investment: resource seeking, market seeking, efficiency seeking, and strategic asset seeking. And these are important to differentiate as to what you're trying to do. If you are simply resource seeking, you're looking for commodities like coal or diamonds or oil, and you're trying to get those raw materials because those natural resources are unavailable in the home market. At a time, oil was unavailable in significant quantities in our market until we discovered that there was oil in shale, and we discovered shale rather, and we discovered how to efficiently extract that oil from the shale. And all of a sudden, due to our vast shale holdings in the United States, we became a worldwide producer. So we were able to resource seek in our own backyard after spending decades of resource seeking in foreign countries, particularly the Middle East. Next is market seeking, meaning that customers abound for our products. They can afford them. They buy similar products in their country. We need to get there and sell them our products. And countries like India, Vietnam, and other Southeast Asian countries are all ripe for the picking, but their markets are not really that open, and it's up to the multinationals to try to figure out how to get in and work within those markets. That can be through partnership or again direct foreign investment in that area. Then there's efficiency seeking, build it better, cheaper because the labor is there. And Bangladesh and Vietnam are very good examples of clothing that have been manufacturing center there. And finally, strategic asset seeking. This is to acquire established brands and proprietary local technology or existing distribution channels. Walmart has done that in India, purchasing Flipkart and sort of making it a Walmart branded service. That would be an example. The location equation for capital development. This is an interesting slide because if you move from left to right, you start to see sort of an increase or taking on of things. First of all, the market size is very simple. How big is it? We haven't even checked to see if we can get into it. We're just trying to see what the size is. And then we go to the potential, and we see what the future growth will be. And then we look at high retention opportunities, which are driven by population and income growth. And this acts income, and this shows prosperity in emerging markets. So markets like in Africa and so forth have a real potential, but we also have other factors to consider, and that would be the last part, the investment climate. And this is the critical regulatory and social economic factor, and it can put a real barriers up to mitigate much investment. And so if there's strong investment, a great investment climate, then that acts as a multiplier, and it increases the value of the investment by a multiple number of times. So that's the beauty of this model. This is a great model. It's about the pestle model, and it does two things simultaneously. The first thing that it does is it enables a company to look at itself, warts and all, and ask questions of itself. Do we have people who have any knowledge of what's needed in a foreign country? If not, can we get it cost effectively, and so forth? And they judge it through these four areas of environmental, economic, legal, and social. And once that is done, and again, it requires a company to be candid with itself. And research has shown those companies that do this kind of analysis of themselves through SWOT or pestle analysis or both on a regular basis tend to have higher profit margins and are higher leaders, competitive leaders in their market sector. So it's a difficult thing to do, and this is why most companies don't do it as effectively as they should. It is very difficult because getting the information to be objective sometimes is a challenge for both from your company and from the competition in the marketplace. So it requires a lot of horsepower, but at the same time, the benefits are real. And here's really something interesting where we're making a big shift in foreign direct investment into um, emerging economies. And we've gone up to 52%, and that figure is rising. This is 2010. I'm sure it's higher now. But for the first time in modern economic history, more than half of the global FDI is flowing into developing and transitional economies. So capital is hunting for market potential and efficiency rather than just resting in resting in established market size. And a good example is Vietnam, and I'm going to um, show a little video here that sort of highlights this chart about the pestle. All right, here we go.
How does a pestle analysis accurately score the safety and potential of a foreign market? When companies use foreign direct investment to build physical facilities abroad, they must quantify hidden local risks. Say you are deciding whether to build a new manufacturing plant in Vietnam. To map the macro environment, it scores 6 external factors. The axes run from very bad to perfect. First is political, scoring government stability. Economic measures market size and growth potential. Social plots demographics, like an abundant labor force. And technological reflects local innovation and infrastructure. But here is a critical vulnerability. A country might look perfect based on cheap labor and high growth, but still be a disastrous place to operate. That is where the final 2 strict filters come in. Legal scores evaluate local tax laws and trade policies, and environmental maps strict ecological regulations, the ultimate barriers to operating legally and profitably. Connecting these 6 points forms the pestle hexagon. It instantly contrasts one country's labor abundance against another's legal supremacy. And that Vietnam plant? The completed hexagon reveals if labor advantages outweigh regulatory risks.
All right. So here is the slide version of exactly what they were talking about. And the two together really make a lot of sense. Because if you understand how the hexagon of analysis fits inside the perfect hexagon, then you can make decisions based upon where you are deficient or where you excel. And this gives you a good idea, again, of the potential risk of going into and how much foreign direct investment you should risk in that country at any given time. So the draw is Vietnam is a tremendous growth engine right now, and it has continued to grow at 6.2 to 6.8%. And it's been doing that since I've been going in 2013. So every year it improves substantially. And so it's got a very fast growing middle class. It's a young population it has 120 million residents and growing, and it has a labor force of 57.5 million. And again, they're relatively young and hard workers compared to Western countries where the median age is higher, much higher. I think our median age here is in the 30s or 40s, and their median age is 27. So they have a tremendous potential. But there is some drag. And number one is the regulatory bottlenecks. Uh, they're incredible. I'll tell you about one in a minute. Um, Legal friction is, again, below average. Environmental lags. And the conclusion would be to capture FDI within the highly competitive AEC. Vietnam is being forced to actively broaden its pestle hexagon structurally and reforming its economic and legal sectors. I had a colleague in Vietnam who wanted me to send him a iPad, so I did. I purchased it here, and he sent me the money, or tried to anyway. No, he didn't. No, I had to. No, he didn't. I sent it, and anyway, when it arrived, it basically scared him to death because the authorities were contacting him and saying that he owed a tax on this item and he had to pay it, and he was in big trouble if he did not. And what I found out was, um, and I'll never do that again. What I found out is every significant item that you send into the country does have a tax or tariff on it that it must be paid, and if you don't, you get in trouble. Conversely, another colleague in the office said, I want to buy a MacBook, and mine's worn out. I want to buy a new one, so I want you to buy it for me in the United States, John, and I will pay you. I want you to bring it here when you visit, and I will pay you for it. And that's what he did. And it was very easy. There were no regulatory hurdles of any kind. So uh, that's that's something that has to happen in Vietnam. If people send us something from overseas, we don't have the law coming to our door and scaring us to death, telling us we owe money to the government. So that's, again, something that they need to overcome, and they will as they continue to grow. So in hindsight, or in summary, there are three things that a firm needs to do. They need to find an economic advantage. They need to map the psychological distance, and they need to audit the investment climate. And that's enables them not to jump into the dark. So that's very important. And if we take a look and just review here for a second, we have the roadmap to international expansion frameworks and theory. This is sort of an overview of what we just talked about. On the left, we have the foundations of global trade, and we have Ricardo's comparative advantage with the scales there. And then if we move to the right, we see what kind of resources are we looking for? And new customers, market seeking, natural resources, and then we move down here to the gravity model of global trade. And then as we move to make our decision, we look at the upscale stage model, and then we look at the concept of psychological distance. Is it close? Well, if it is, then it's going to make our decision a lot easier. If it is not, it's going to be very difficult. Here is a chart showing how similar or distance the psychological distance is through the pestle environmental scan. And you'll see that Singapore is a very easy place to do business. Vietnam, it's in the middle of the road and improving. And again, Indonesia is slightly better in some areas, worse in others. So this is sort of a way for you to sort of put all this together in one thought. So I hope you got a good understanding of what chapters 3 and 4 are all about, and in terms of working and completing your assignments. You're all doing an excellent job, and I've enjoyed reading and looking at your assignments. So keep up the good work. Again, I would encourage you to come and attend these sessions. Your interaction and feedback is very important. It helps make it lively for those who are not able to be here. So anyway, everybody out there, stay safe, and remember, I'll see you in class. Good afternoon, everyone.